coming in. Okay, well, that's what we said, that right? That this is what we are for, to support our local authors and authors. So the goal of a public library, is to provide reading, viewing materials and information. But I view our role more broader than just providing information. I feel like we are connectors. We connect our readers and writers. We connect business people. We connect young moms who come to the library. So we connect people. And I feel like for writers, um, libraries are a good marketing tool because we getting a local writer's book and new writer's book, and we're presenting them to our audience, to our readers, and spike interest. So our public library is very proud of being supportive of local authors and new authors. So today we have our special event where we're doing virtual book launch. And now I let our programming librarian, Giovanna Inacio, to present our guest.
Thank you, Galina, and welcome everyone. Thank you to Lyn Liao Butler and Roselle Lim for joining us, for agreeing to do this with our library today. I did want to mention very quickly some housekeeping rules. We do ask that you stay muted during the discussion, the conversation. And if you have a question, you can type it in the chat box and we will make sure to get to it. But we do ask that everyone stay muted. We are recording. So if you'd like to stop your video, you can, but if the spotlight will be on the authors. Okay, so now without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our authors tonight. Lyn Liao Butler was born in Taiwan and moved to the States when she was 7. In her past and present lives, she has been a concert pianist, a professional ballet and modern dancer, a fitness studio owner, a personal trainer and instructor, an RYT 200-hour yoga instructor, a purse designer with an Etsy shop, and most recently, author of multicultural women's fiction. Lyn did not have a tiger mom. She came about her own overachieving all on her own when she is not torturing clients or talking to imaginary clients. Lyn enjoys spending time with her FDNY husband, their son, the happiest little boy in the world, 2 stubborn dash hounds, and trying crazy yoga poses on a stand-up paddle board. So far, she has not fallen into the water yet. Roselle Lim was born in the Philippines and immigrated to Canada as a child. She lived in North Scarborough in a diverse Asian neighborhood. She found her love of writing by listening to her Lola, meaning her paternal grandmother's stories about Filipino folktales, growing up in a household where Chinese superstition mingled with Filipino Catholicism. She devoured books about mythology, which shaped the fantasies in her novels. An artist by nature, she considers writing as painting with words. Please join me in welcoming Roselle Lim and Lyn Liao Butler. It's all yours.
So Lyn, this has been your debut week. I'm hoping you celebrated and you had a wonderful time, had some cake. Can you tell us a little bit about anything special that you managed to do?
Well, number one, I got some Veuve Clicquot, which is very expensive that I don't ever buy. So I'm allowing myself a little bit here.
Santé.
There we go. Cheers, everybody. And we've been running around all day today in New York City. We had lunch with my editor, which was really nice because I haven't seen her since the pandemic started. And then my 8-year-old, oh, actually, no, he's 9 now. He turned 9 yesterday. And I ran around New York City to the bookstores, any bookstore we can find, to see if we can find my book. And we actually found it in every store that we went to. So that was fun.
Okay. So, what inspired you or compelled you to write like this book?
Well, I'm not a writer. I did not have a writing degree. I didn't go to school for writing. I don't consider myself a writer. Like, you know, I just in 2015, when we moved here we're in Westchester now, from New York City, my friends in the city wanted to know what I was doing up in the country, they called it. I was like, I'm not in the country. I'm still, you know, I can still commute into the city. So I started a blog to keep them posted, like, you know, what I'm doing here in the country. And the blog post just kind of like, it became a story in my head. And I was like, I think I could write a book. And so January 1st of 2015, I sat down and decided I'm going to write a book. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't Google how to write a book. And I wrote it in 6 months and started querying it in June of 2015 without a single person reading it. And as we all know, that's a very big mistake. Like, you don't do that. You need critique partners, you need beta readers, you need people to, you know, just read it and tell you that that doesn't work, you're showing, whatever, you know. So I Googled, so I didn't hear anything from any agents, like not even a rejection. It was like radio silence. And so I started Googling it to see like, how do you get a book published? I was like, oh, this is going to be harder than I thought. So that's how it started. And it took me 3 books and 3.5 years to sign with an agent. So.
And what was your inspiration that it was like the adoptee story, like the fact that it was the setting, like, can you tell us like what was the seed of your idea for Tiger Mom's Tale?
The book actually used to be called Fit Girls Don't Cry. And it was more about a personal trainer living in New York City. And the main focus was about her life as a trainer in New York City and her dating life. And secondary was the search for heritage, where she didn't know her father and she was estranged. And that book didn't pick up. I didn't find an agent with it. So I put it aside, wrote a second book, got a lot of interest from agents. That didn't, work. So then I went back and I was like, how can I make that first? Like, I couldn't stop thinking about that first book. So instead of focusing on the personal training aspect, I focused more on her search for her identity, like what it felt like to look Asian on the outside, but was white on the inside, because the main character, Lexa, is half Taiwanese and half white. And she was brought up with her white family who are all blonde. So she looks Asian, she sticks out everywhere she goes. So she doesn't feel quite like an American when she's here in New York City. And then when she goes to Taiwan to visit, everybody calls, they're like, you're not Taiwanese enough because you're half white and you don't speak Mandarin or in Taiwanese very well. So she was kind of caught in between two worlds. And even though I'm 100% Taiwanese, I felt the same way, because when I'm here in New York, I look Asian and everybody assumes I'm Asian, that I am stereotypical, like, submissive and very smart and all this, whatever. I'm not saying I'm not smart, but I'm not like super smart like my cousins, who some of them are here. David, I see you. So I was not the pride of any Tiger Mom, if you're gonna put it that way. So, and then when we go to Taiwan, everybody there called us the American cousins, and they didn't make fun, but they said my Taiwanese and my Mandarin was funny. It didn't sound right. So we weren't full Taiwanese there. So I was caught in between two worlds. And the book really came because I wanted to know what happens if someone looks Asian on the outside, but feels American on the inside, and how does she reconcile the two sides? So that's where that came from.
So then on a similar tangent, what you're talking about is like the diaspora, basically the diaspora experience, right? Of growing up Asian, but here, versus what it would be like if you were Taiwanese born living in Taiwan. There's like a massive difference. How do you relate that to Lex's journey in the novel? Does she have like other themes as well that she explores other than her heritage?
So she had a trauma in when she was 14. So she used to go back and visit her family, her father and family over there. And then because of something that happened when she was 14, she became estranged from them. And so she has not seen them since she was 14, and she's now in her 30s, trying to forget about her Asian side. And then because her estranged father dies unexpectedly, she's suddenly faced with the choice of, does she go back and help her Taiwanese family, or does she like turn her back on them because they turned their back on her and focus on her American life? I think I just forgot what your question was. I was just talking.
Oh, I was saying, like, other than like the diaspora experience, what else does, like, can you describe any other like ways that Lexa grows in her journey throughout the novel?
Okay, well, so she, because of what happened, this estrangement, she's kind of closed herself off to love, and all she does is she focuses on her work and her clients, and she's not willing to open herself up to love because she was betrayed by her father and others. So she had to learn to like reconcile like what happened in the past, and so bearing it, like she didn't even tell her sister, her American sister, and her stepfather what happened. So she had to like kind of face what happened in the past in order to fully realize what her life is.
Oh, so what you're talking about is basically very juicy family secrets, right?
Exactly. Very
okay. So I'm going to transition into the next question, which is, the importance of family is central to the themes of this book. What do you hope readers will take away from the story in regards to what family means, other than the fact that we all tend to hide a lot of secrets that we don't talk about?
Yeah, so I think every family has secrets, and you know, they can tell you don't, but I think everybody does, and some of them are worse than others. So some of them are, you know, okay. So in Lexa's life, she's got this thing that happened to her when she's 14, and it's kind of defined her entire life. So she has to kind of figure out how did she get past it, and the way she dealt with it was by pushing it aside and not dealing with it. So she needed to kind of face like what happened to her, and in a way, like her father's death kind of forced her to make a choice. Like, does she go back to Taiwan and confront whoever drove her away? And in the Chinese, Taiwanese, Asian cultures, there is a stereotype for a reason. Like, there's that tiger mom who, and I think what somebody has said to me, like, wow, that tiger mom was really mean, like the way she treated her children. I'm like, well, that's what makes her a tiger mom. They really do this to their kids. They, you know, push them. And I mean, it seems cruel to everybody else, like how they just push and push, and like their child is like their whole, and how they succeed is their whole life. So that was also a big part of what happened in the book. Like, I guess I don't want to give stuff away, but she had to deal with this tiger mom that did something. And yeah, it was, so I wanted to play into that stereotype, because it is a stereotype for a reason, that there are people out there that do this, and that all their focus is they want their child to succeed at cost of anybody else, including their child.
Okay. This is another kind of family secret juicy question, which is, a lot of writers tend to write about people that they know, whether it's thinly disguised or is extremely obvious. It does happen in novels. So for you, are there any characters in the novel that are inspired by people that you know in real life?
Okay, so number one, my mom, I said this in the bio because she wanted me to make sure everybody knows, she is not a tiger mom. She did not push me. She did not do any of that. And I actually I know a lot of tiger moms, but this is not based on any one person I know. It's more based on all the people that I know who are tiger moms, and just kind of taking the traits from each of them. Other than that, there are snippets of my clients, because I used to be a personal trainer in New York City, just like Lexa is. There are snippets of my clients, but I combine them so nobody would be able to recognize themselves. And Lexa and I, people have asked me, like, is she based on you? And no, she's not. I'm not half Taiwanese, half white. I don't have an estranged father in Taiwan. I didn't grow up in a blonde family. The only thing that we have in common is that she is a personal trainer living in New York City, and, you know, still single in her 30s. And that's about it. There was one other character, her Taiwanese sister, Su Ling, is not based on anybody, but her story with being born with like missing part of the leg is inspired by a little girl that I know. And her mom knows about it. I did tell her, and she said it's totally fine, but it's inspired by how spunky she is, that she faces life like she falls down, she gets up, she laughs. I think her mom is here somewhere, but yeah, Su Ling is, her spirit is based on this little girl that I know. But other than that, everybody's made up, I think.
Well, usually for writers, it's the people that you don't like that you kind of thinly disguise as a villain, right?
I didn't do it in this book, but I did in following books. There are people that I've thinly disguised into villains in other books.
So everybody should pick up the next book for sure and do it like a guess.
Figure out if you are, my husband, no, not my sister-in-law got me a shirt that says, I'm a writer. Anything you say to me will end up in a story. So it's kind of true, because I do get my inspiration from life.
So which character in your book then that you found like to be such a joy to write, that just came really easily for you and gave you like kind of writerly happiness, that didn't give you as much problems when you're writing a novel?
Well, Lexa was actually really easy to write. I know a lot of times main characters, people have problem writing them because, you're trying to get into their head and their backstory and all that, but she was very easy to write in both versions, in Fit Girls Don't Cry and this one. And the other one that I really loved writing was the Tiger Mom. She was so much fun, like being just letting, she didn't care about anything except her child. And the thing she did was, they're not very nice. They're harmful, but I really had a good time writing her. So I don't know what that says about me, that I'm evil in disguise or something, but I like writing evil people.
So do you, when you're writing about these characters, do you see them in your head? Like, can you hear their voice in their head, or is it more of an abstract concept for you?
Hear them. They are, I think about them all the time. Like, I am not someone who sits down and writes every day. I know some people said, they have to get certain words down every day. I don't write every day. I have many days, sometimes weeks or months, where I don't write a single word, and I call it percolating. I'm percolating ideas. So I'm thinking about the character. I'm thinking about, what they like, what they don't like, what their relationship is with the other characters, what is their personality like. So I'm basically building like imaginary friends, or if they're not nice people, imaginary enemies in my head. So I do think about them all the time. I talk to them, and sometimes I wake up and I think they're real people because I'm thinking about them so much. But that way, when I actually sit down to write, they're already fully realized characters that I can, and I do make a timeline. Like, I'll sit down and say, okay, she's born this day, and then this happened to her this day, she was this old, because otherwise I get confused and it's like, wait, how long ago did that happen? So I do write a timeline. So I tend to do that before, and then sometimes I even write down character traits, like what is, how does she react to people? Is she snarky? Is she, like passive aggressive? So I get all that in my head before I actually even sit down to write the story.
What I learned from writing my debut is I have to know the ages of my characters. I can't have them be 56 in chapter 1 and be 72 in chapter 5 if there's no time jump.
And that's right, if you don't figure out how old they are.
But what you call it percolating, I call it marinating in my brain. And usually for me, if I'm ever stuck on something, or like, I agree with you that you write at your own pace. For some people, yes. For you, you can write like 3,000 in a day if like inspiration strikes, right? But then sometimes you also go between months, like you said.
Right. That's
between
I write in, like, I call it spurts and starts. Like, I went for months without writing, and then when I was in Kauai earlier this year, I think I wrote like 40,000 words in 2.5 weeks. And that was just because I've been thinking about it so much that I sat down and I just banged it out. But sometimes I go, like during the pandemic, I hardly wrote a word the entire pandemic, but that's because I was also homeschooling an 8-year-old, which was not fun. So.
So which one then was the most challenging character for you to write?
I think it was Lexa's sister, Maddie, because she's the American. Lexa has 2 sisters. She has a half sister who is white and American, and another half sister who is Taiwanese. and they hate each other. And Maddie is a spoiled brat. A lot of people hate her. Like she's says whatever she is thinking. She is like has no class. Like she comes off a little, just like not really racist and homophobic, but she does. Like she says things that are not very nice. And I wanted to make her like a reason why she's like that. She's outspoken. This is what. But at the end, I wanted people to kind of see that there was a softer side to Maddie. So it was really hard because people did not like her. And that was fine because she was not supposed to be likable, but I wanted to have people get into her head a little and to understand why she's the way she is and why she was sticking up for Lexa and why she's, brass. And somebody just recently told me, they're like, I hated Maddie, but then by the end of the book, I actually ended up liking her. So that was a good thing to me because that was what I was trying to accomplish.
On a tangent, because you spoke about it briefly, do you have any writing advice for anybody who is just trying to get like their first novel out?
Yes, I do, because my New York City writing critique group knows this. I gave up writing after my second book. I didn't tell anybody I was writing. Nobody knew except my husband. I lied to everybody. So I used to teach a fitness class on Saturday mornings. And Sue, you're here, I would teach the class and then I would run out of the class and I have to catch a train to the city. And everybody's like, where are you going to the city for? I'm like, work. I was really going to a critique meeting. So I was lying about my writing and people are like, you're working, on Saturday. I was like, yeah, this client, she just really needs to work out every Saturday. So I have to go. So I felt like I was wasting my time because I was writing and nothing was happening. I was not getting an agent. I was getting rejections. I got some interest, but it took 3.5 years and I just felt like it was like a dirty secret, almost like I hadn't, and especially coming from a Taiwanese Asian background, all my cousins are like doctors or engineers or lawyers or, have some sort of like degree. And here I am. I was a professional ballet dancer and modern dancer in New York City. I was always in the creative arts. I didn't follow like the typical Asian like child, what I was supposed to do. So I didn't tell anybody because I felt like I was wasting my time. But I just couldn't give up. Like I tried to give up after the second book and like a month later, the idea for how to rewrite this book came to me and I just sat down and I just started writing again. So my advice is that if you really, really like to write and you can't not write, just do it, because whatever is going to happen for you, your path, it will happen. You'll find it eventually, because publishing is so hard. It's not just about how good of a writer you are. It's also about luck, timing, like finding the right agent or the right editor at the right time, because your book could be timely now, but like 2 years from now, it's not. Or, at the time I was querying that first book, it wasn't the right time for it. And now maybe this book would be. So it's just really about luck and timing, a lot of it. So if you really like to write, just keep writing, keep learning, keep an open mind, just read a lot. Like, I think I learned how to write from reading, mostly just studying authors that I loved. So that helped a lot. Like if you know the genres and all the authors are in whatever genre that you want to write, it really helps to read them.
To add to what Lyn said, she basically kind of outlined it, that if you do want to write your first novel, the path to get there may not be how you envisioned it to be. Like Lyn said, you may think that it's an easy, I just hop on the escalator, right, go all the way up, and I'm just going to get to where instead of, the peaks and valleys and potholes and everything else to get to where you need to go.
I really thought when I first started querying, I really thought I was just going to send it out there and like all these agents were going to be like, I want to sign you. And then, I'll get a book deal in 2 weeks or something. I was very naive. I just have to say the author that made me write, the only reason why I became a writer is because of Leanne Moriarty. Am I saying her name right? Is that how you say her name?
Yep, Leanne Moriarty, I think, yeah.
I read her books in 2013 when my life fell apart. Like 2013, like everything bad you can think of happened to me. I had all these major traumas, physically, emotionally, financially, work, and like literally my life just stopped. And I started reading her books, and her books are like, she's got some like some suspense in there, but they're also written in a way where you can, even though she's based in Australia, me here in New York was like, I could totally, like, she gets me, she understands me. And she helped me so much to see that there are other women out there going through certain traumas or having, you know, these same thoughts. And I just devoured all her books. And it's because of her, all the books I read in 2013, 14, that I decided, you know what, if I can write books like her and help other people, like her books helped me, that's what I wanted to do. And that's why I started writing. Like so if I ever meet her, I think I would just fall down dead on the floor, like faint dead away, and just like, I wouldn't even be able to talk. I'd be like, and then just.
Do you have any other authors that are your inspiration other than Leanne?
You, Roselle. So when I was, didn't have an agent yet, and I used to wander Barnes and Nobles looking at all the Berkley books. For some reason, all my favorite books were by Berkley. And then I realized that a lot of them were edited by Cindy Huang, who is now my editor and Roselle's editor. I remember just walking through bookstores all the time. I would go in and just browse, just like looking at these Berkley books and going, oh my God, that's never going to be me. I can't even get an agent. That would be like the ultimate dream. And I remember when Roselle's debut came out in, was it 2018? Is that right?
2019. 19? Yes, 19.
So when her came out, my husband and I were in a wedding in the middle of nowhere. I've told her this story, so she knows. And I made him drive to the nearest Barnes and Noble, which was like 45 minutes out of the way, so that I could look for her book, because I had heard so much about it and I looked up to her so much. Like, and at that time I was on submission, and Cindy Huang was one of the editors who was reading. And I was just like, oh my God, I would totally die if Roselle and I had the same editor. And I got the book, I read it, I loved it. So she was one of the role models, along with like Jean Kwok, who's another Asian American writer, and Lisa Ko, who wrote The Leavers. They were like, because I didn't see a lot of Asian American writers out there who were writing fiction. They were like my role models as I was going through these three women. And now look, Roselle and I are friends, and she's actually talking to me at my launch party, and I'm a Berkley author just like her.
Yeah, eventually we'll have lunch and we'll eat all the yummy things that you and I both write about.
Yes, we both love food, like huge foodies. So I think we could have a lot of fun eating together.
Okay, I'm going to go off one of the questions that were in the chat because you talked about Leanne. What Leanne Moriarty book would you recommend? This is for Mia.
My favorite book is what's it called? Her Husband's Secret.
That's mine too.
My absolute favorite. And you know, this is funny. When I went to go rewrite that first book, I actually took Her Husband's Secret and I like dissected it. Like I went and I wrote down, okay, when did this happen? When did she drop the first bomb? Okay, that first bomb, the first hint came in page 58. And then the second thing, and when did she drop the bomb? Like, what was this husband's secret? Like, I literally dissected it. And that's how I learned how to write a book. Because I know there's craft books out there which talks about like the 3 acts and like, you know, the climax should happen here as whatever percent. I've never read any of the books and did that. I just went by feel, like, okay, I think now's a good time to, and it was because I dissected her book. I did it with that book, Big Little Lies, and what's the one, the Truly Madly Lovely or Truly Madly Guiltily? I forgot.
I remember that one, but for me, I just remember Her Husband's Secret the most because that's the one that left like, I think my favorite of hers. Yeah.
So that's how I learned how to write a book, is by dissecting her books. It's like, that was my craft book. Like, you know, people read like Stephen King's and other books, and that was my craft book.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who feels caught between two cultures and doesn't know where they belong?
I think that's a lot of more people than we realize, because once this book started going out, a lot of people reached out to me and said they felt that way, even if they weren't Asian, like they were, you know, either children of immigrant families or just have either born with 2 separate heritages. I really think that you need to get to know both sides. You can't ignore one side or the other, because it's always going to come back and you're always going to have questions. And maybe it's not now, but later on in life, you might, you know, think like, what am I missing? And or you just realize that you're not truly yourself because you haven't figured out who you are. So for me, it took me 40 years or so to figure out that, yes, I am Taiwanese. I'm also American. When I'm home, I would be like the good Taiwanese daughter, like did what my parents said. We were never caused trouble. I was the good high school kid who didn't go to parties, didn't get drunk, was always home, by 8, whatever. And then I went to college and I went wild. And then I went crazy because now I was on my own for the first time in life, nobody to tell me what to do. And the American side came out. And then I always felt like I had to be 2 different people, like the good Taiwanese daughter and then the American person who does whatever she wants. And even now, like right before this launch, I was saying to a friend who's here right now, I said, should I wear for my launch party, should I wear a nice conservative dress that I made that's, my mom would approve? Or should I wear this other dress, which is a little sexier? It's got spaghetti straps. So my mom would freak out if she saw me and be like, oh, you can't wear that. And I was like, even at this now, I'm still having that pull of the 2 sides. And you just have to kind of just go with it, I guess, and decide for yourself, like, who are you? And take whatever from both sides of your heritage that you can, basically.
Then I guess do you ever think that it's like this, trying to, when you immigrate to this country, right? It's trying to assimilate. It's that battle between trying to assimilate and trying to retain your culture. That's kind of like, it's like, do you like eat your lunch that everybody is looking at in school when you have your lunch out and you've got like tea, eggs and rice and whatever else, and everybody else has peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? It's like, do you think that it's that kind of, are you proud of like having something strange that you're going to get mocked for, versus like asking your parents, hey, can you just make me a PB&J so I can blend in with everybody else? Like, was it like that for you growing up? Like, did you ask for the sandwich or did you just keep?
I asked for the sandwich. We grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. I think we were one of only my class had 81 people in the graduating class. And I think there were 2 Asians in our class. And then the entire school, there was only like a handful. So I wanted to be white. I wanted to have blonde hair. I wanted curly ringlets like Nellie Olson in Little House on the Prairie. Like, I thought that was the epitome of beauty, to have curly blonde hair, and that if I had that, I would be popular and, well liked. I did not want the Chinese sticky rice or the lao nung that my parents make, which is like the stewed eggs and meat. And I wanted to just, I think we would just buy like the hot lunch and, eat the tater tots and the disgusting pizza or whatever they served. But we thought that was so cool, my sister and I. So I was definitely ashamed. I would not embrace my Asianness when we were growing up, because I wanted to be like everybody else. We were made fun of, walking home from school. And I actually wrote about it in, I think the second book maybe, or the first, I can't remember. One of the books I wrote about that. So it wasn't until, and even in college, I was just embraced the whole American lifestyle, like eating all the pasta and pizza and the taco bars and whatever. And that's, I gained the freshman 15 because I wasn't eating my mom's and dad's cooking. And I wanted to be white. I really did. I thought being white was better. And it wasn't. And then I was also told in college, all these boys wanted to hook up with me, right? But they didn't want to date me. So they wanted to spend time with me and hook up, do whatever, but they would never take me on dates. And they said, and one boy actually admitted to me, I can't take you home to meet my parents. So that just also made me more wanting to be American and not Taiwanese, because I was good enough to hang out with and hook up with maybe, but not to take home. And when that boy said that to me, I finally realized, I was like, that's why all these, because I went to a very white preppy college also, where like we were definitely in the minority. So it wasn't until my 30s into my 40s that I really started to embrace my Asianness and my culture and be proud that I'm Taiwanese American. And now, now I'm like, I don't care if I want to eat stinky tofu, too bad. I'm going to smell you out. And if I want to eat, this, whatever. And that's why I describe the foods in my book, because these are all the foods that I loved, but hid when I was younger. So hopefully people, will read about it and want to try it.
Oh, I know about the stinky tofu. I would go to the night markets in Toronto, and before we even park, you can smell it right across the parking lot where they have. There's a reason why it's open air
Right.
to begin with. Yes.
Way it's like, but it's so good, right? If when
Yeah,
you,
it is. It's amazing.
it's not stinky, it's very mild. So
Do you think that that's something like how you grapple with your culture? Do you think that I'm thinking for my daughter, right? She's also like she's half, basically half white, half Asian. I'm trying to raise her to embrace her culture because like she's has a similar upbringing as you, as in she's living in a predominantly white small country town.
Right.
Do you think that for the next generation, for your son, he'd be grappling with the same kind of heritage issues, or you think that he's going to be better adjusted because you're guiding him saying it's okay?
I think he might be better because I try to reinforce every day, like, it's okay. Like, if you want to bring, he loves noodles. So if you want to bring stir-fried noodles for lunch and somebody makes fun of you, you tell them, that's nice. I'm glad, it's okay if you don't like it, but I like it. So I'm going to enjoy it. Like I'll tell them stuff like that. Like, if somebody makes fun of you and say you're Chinese, say, yes, I am Chinese, and you be proud of it. Or as my mom said, Taiwanese, like, you're Taiwanese, and be proud of it. And I tell them, people might make fun of you because of, the way you look and your eyes or whatever. And you just tell them that's fine. You don't know any different. This is what you were brought up with. But this is who I am. And you're from another country. And I was like, you can turn around and say, well, where are you from? Like, where's your family from? And yes, I am trying to be very open with him about it. He seems to so far, he's very carefree and he doesn't take what other kids say to him to heart, and he's acting like that. But I know as he gets older, it is going to be difficult. And he is, my husband's white. So technically he would be half Asian and half white, but he's adopted. So he's 100% Chinese. So he says to me, he's like, I'm Chinese, you're Taiwanese, and daddy's Irish, but we're all Irish, Chinese, Taiwanese. I'm like, yes, we all are, because we take different parts of your heritage. And, for St. Patrick's Day, we celebrate St. Patrick's Day. For Taiwanese New Year, or Lunar New Year, as my mom says, we celebrate that. So I think hopefully, because I grew up here and I went through it, it'll help him. Because my parents did not grow up here. We were 7 when we immigrated here. So they were completely new to the country and hadn't dealt with this kind of stuff. So I'm hoping it's easier for him and that he can grow up having a sense of knowing it's okay that he is different and this is who he is. And if you don't like it, that's fine. If you want to learn more about me, you can come talk to me. So hopefully.
Okay. You mentioned Red Threads of Fate as your second book. Can you tell us what you're working on next?
So Red Thread of Fate is my second book, which comes out February 8th of 2022. So it's only 7 months from now. I actually finished that book while I was on submission with The Tiger Mom's Tale. So my agent and I worked on it while we were on submissions, just in case Tiger Mom didn't sell, we were going to go on submission with this one. But then this one did sell. And so Cindy, my editor, bought both. So this book has been done since 2019. And it's now just, getting into copy edits and whatever. And while during the pandemic in January, February, and March, for 2 months, my family and I decided to go to Kauai and live there for 2 months, because my third book was going to be based in Kauai. And I was supposed to go there last year to do research, but then the pandemic hit and didn't happen. And then this year with, everything else going on, I was like, I need to go there and do the research. I can't write some of these scenes without being there again. So they were being so strict about the quarantine. I think it was a 14-day quarantine, and you had to be in a hotel, and they send armed guards at any time, and they come knock on the door with, rifles and stuff like that. Like, this really happened. You can't stay in an Airbnb, you can't stay in a house, and you can't leave your hotel room. So we thought, we're like, if we're going to do that, we might as well stay for a long time. But we got lucky. By the time we went in January, it was only a 3-day quarantine, and you could stay in a resort bubble. So you didn't have to stay in your room, you can walk around. And we ended up staying. It was the best. I mean, I wrote the entire book while I was there, and half of a fourth book while I was in Kauai. So that's what I was working on now. And then I came home and kind of wrote another half of another book. So I've got 3 partial books out right now that are half done. And then my agent's like, I think you need to take a break right now because you're too far ahead and I can't submit any more books out there. So I'm not really working on anything right now. I'm kind of taking the time to just enjoy this launch. And hopefully I'll be able to finish one of the other books if they get picked up.
Did you love doing the research? For like, what is your opinion on book research, especially when you're going to beautiful, beautiful Hawaii?
I highly recommend it to any writer that's listening. If you have a dream location, set your next book there, and then you can go there, do research, and you can write off the whole trip. That's what my accountant said, and that's what my editor said. She's like, just write it off. It was great because I would just ask people questions about what it's like to live there. Like, is this area called a certain thing? Because, like tourists knows this as one thing. What is the locals called it? Somebody was going to die, and somebody always dies in my books. I was asking people like, okay, so if the Wailua River rose and like was really flooded and this woman is standing there and she can't swim, would it sweep her away? And they're like, yeah, she can't swim. Like when it surges, it just like, whoosh, they're gone. I'm like, perfect. That's how she's going to die. And the guy's like, okay. And he's like slowly backing away. It's like, so my publisher made me bookmarks so I can hand them out to people and say, no, I'm a writer. I'm not a potential murderer. I'm not trying to plot somebody's murder. And then they told me, oh, in Kauai, if you kill someone, it'll never be solved. So if you want to kill someone, Kauai is the best place to do it. And I'm like, no, seriously, I'm not trying to kill someone. I'm doing research. So it was a lot of fun. Like, it was really funny, like the people I ran into, and most of them were very receptive when they found out that I was researching for book, and they would sit down with me and, tell me stuff that I needed to know. And I would, I tried out foods because that was going to make it into the book. So we went to all the food carts. I dragged my husband and son around it's like, oh, we have to go to this place. We have to go to this place. I could write about it authentically. And I didn't write it from the perspective of someone who lives in native from there. I wrote from the perspective of a New York City woman moving to Kauai. So it's from her perspective. Like I wasn't, so it was great. I highly recommend it.
I did that for Paris. I went there, but it's more from a tourist point of view. And it helped a little bit that I could speak, like I could basically speak a bit of French and understand it and read it.
Right.
So like going to Paris was just for me like a revelation because I love art, and I ate and ate and ate, just like probably what you did in Hawaii, poke balls and whatnot.
And it was great, right? It was a great experience, and you made it into your book because that second book is so filled with like the essence of Paris. It's like,
Yeah.
There was a question early on when we first started from Terry, and it was for both of you. And I think you've partially answered the question, but I just wanted to read it out loud since it was in the chat. Did you learn a habit ritual that you found most helpful in writing your book, your novels?
What'd you say?
Aside from visiting the location, did you learn a habit ritual that you found most helpful in writing?
Roselle, you want to go first?
Oh, is this related to the book researcher? But for me, I could just give you a habit or ritual that I do when I'm drafting a book. That's how I can answer. For me, I always light a candle. And Mia would know this because she also is addicted to candles. But I find that having a candle there when you're writing changes your atmosphere and gives you an olfactory kind of like it triggers your olfactory senses so that you're smelling something, so you can associate the smell with that it's work time, that you're sitting down and you're writing. And if you pick the right candle, you can pick like a tiki beach or whatnot, and it would kind of transport you into that whatever it is that you're writing to give you like a better kind of bubble, since a lot of people like us are working from home and you can't go anywhere. And if you can't go anywhere, go to a coffee shop, just light a candle, and then it would at least fool your senses into thinking that something is different.
That's a great idea. I'd never even thought of that. I'm obsessed with candles, so I might start doing that.
Yep.
I have absolutely no habits or rituals. I'm one of those people. I carry my laptop or a notebook around with me all the time because inspiration strikes at the strangest times for me. And I'll literally pull over and grab my laptop and like suddenly just start writing something. So I have absolutely no rituals. I don't light candles. I don't sit I try to sit on my desk. That didn't work. I can write anywhere and any place. When we were in Kauai, I know this sounds horrible. This sounds weird, but like my ritual was to go to happy hour with my family and get a Mai Tai, and literally the words just flowed, and my son and husband are talking and gabbing. It's loud in there, and I usually can't write when it's loud, but with that one Mai Tai next to me, I was just like, blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, oh, I just finished 2 chapters. He's like, what? So seriously, and as a joke, my tagline on Twitter was fueled by sunshine, papayas, and Mai Tais. And I think that's my ritual. I think if I could do that every day, I think I would bang out like 10 books. But I'm going to try the candle thing. I like that.
So there was another question from Sapna for Lyn. Do you see writing as your career, considering you started this conversation saying you are a non-writer?
So I never thought I would become a published writer. Like I honestly never thought it would happen. It was a pipe dream. It was something that I just fell into, like I wanted to do, but I didn't think of that as a career. But now I do, because my agent and I have a plan. Like we have, how we're going to position me, because I am writing in different genres. And usually when you're starting out, it's hard. It's a little, too much for people to know who exactly you are, because nobody knows you. And if you're writing too many genres, so we have a plan and a goal. So I do now consider writing a career, and I'm very happy about it. I'm so happy that I get this opportunity to do this and tell more stories. So yes, now I do. If you had asked me like 2 years ago, I probably have said no.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And just scrolling through, there are a lot of great comments in the chat, by the way. So if you have a chance to scroll through them. There was a question also from Allison, and you've covered some of this, but specifically about the Tiger Mom's Tale. What do you want readers to take away from the novel?
So right, and it's funny how this book is coming out now after all the anti-Asian sentiment that's happened. And that was one of the reasons I think the book was pushed back a little bit with the pandemic and everything. I just feel like it's so important right now to have representation from all different heritages, groups, whatever, because my editor, Cindy, has said to me when I've met her the first time, she said in all the 20 odd years that she's been working in publishing, she has never once gotten a submission from a Taiwanese American perspective, which I found shocking, because there are a lot of Taiwanese Americans in America and they are writers. And the fact that she's never once gotten one was just kind of eye-opener to me. And I've also said this to some other writers, it's like, I think Rosie and I talked about this. I feel almost like a responsibility to represent Taiwanese American writers. I mean, Taiwanese American perspective, but my perspective is just one person. I came here when I was 7. And so my Mandarin and my Taiwanese is at a 7-year-old's level. Like my mom will tell you, like I sound like a 7-year-old when I speak Mandarin. And there are other people who maybe didn't come over until they were in their 20s and they're more Taiwanese than I. And this goes back to what my book, how she feels like she's not Taiwanese enough or not American enough. So I feel like this should just be the first book, and hopefully, and not just Taiwanese American, like all Asian, any other ethnicity, whatever, cultures, groups, whatever. There needs to be more diverse reads out there, because America is not just made up of one type of people. So the more books out there that's written, the more perspective there is, the more people are going to learn and hopefully see that, we are all Americans, that we're not just one type. And that's what I want people to take from it, is that, if you don't know anything about Taiwanese American, you don't know anything about Asians, this is a good start. And then hopefully there'll be more books coming. And I wrote this in my book, like somebody said, you're from Taiwan. Oh, I love Thai food. It's like, no, Taiwan is not Thailand. So, I mean, and you can't fault them, because they don't know. They did not grow up knowing that Taiwan and Thailand are 2 different countries. So the more that's put out there, I think the more hopefully people will open their eyes.
And there's another question. For Lyn, what about your Etsy business? I love your purses.
So I was a professional ballet and modern dancer in New York City for years. And then because I don't make that much money, I had to do a side business. And I was a waitress, but then I was dancing 8 hours a day and then on my feet till 2 o'clock in the morning, and that didn't work. So I became a personal trainer, fitness instructor, and then eventually yoga instructor. But it was very stressful, like dancing and then working, with clients, like, because you have to be on all the time. And I call myself a reluctant extrovert, meaning I can extrovert with the best of them, but I'd rather be left alone. If like I like to be alone. So I started sewing as a night after being like talking to people all day long and like, come on, you can do it. Just 800 more burpees. You can do it. I would sit on my sewing machine. It was like meditation to me. And I would just sew. And it was like peaceful. Like I can't meditate. I'm too type A for that. But sewing was my meditation. And I made all my bridesmaids dresses for my wedding. And then I made little purses to go with it as thank you presents. And people like, oh, this is so cute. Can I buy this? I'm like, well, I mean, you can have it. They're like, no, we'll pay you for it. And then somebody told me about Etsy. And so I just started, it was just a hobby, and it kind of took off and just turned into this side business that I do whenever I can. I use it as meditation, really. Like at night after, writing or whatever, I just shut off my brain. I can do it without thinking, and I just sew. And I love sewing. And Roselle is a big sewer too, but she hand sews and she makes these beautiful things. And so we have that in common too.
I do embroidery.
Yeah, but it's beautiful, the stuff she does. And she's a beautiful, wonderful artist too. She draws people and they look just like, I love your portraits.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for that. And I guess people can go to your Etsy site. It's still up if people want to investigate. It's on vacation. That's understandable.
I took Roselle's advice and I took the week off, so I'm not really teaching, and the shop is on vacation until like Saturday, I think.
So I have a question. There was someone earlier who asked about the book, The Tiger Mom's Tale, if it's appropriate for high school students. And that made me think, would you ever tackle writing a version for young adults so that, maybe we need that voice out there?
How do you say that? Because the second book I wrote in Kauai is a YA book. It just flowed out of me because I just took, my agent said to me, you're really channeling your 17-year-old self. Like all that feeling of not fitting in, not belonging, and like hiding behind, like wanting to be, like thinking that, being Asian means I wasn't good enough or attractive enough to be the face of it. So I actually did write a YA book, and I am branching into YA hopefully. So that was the half a book I wrote while I was in Kauai.
Oh, nice. So we have that to look forward to then. That's great.
Hopefully that's something that will come into fruition.
And there's a question from Allie for Lynn. Was Lex's relationship with her clients inspired by your experience with your clients?
Yes, that was very much so. I changed all the clients. Like I combined a few of them together, and I completely changed some of the richer clients because I didn't want them to know that that was them I was portraying, because they are very wealthy people. But yes, Andy is like a combination of 3 of my favorite clients. One of them was Alex Guarnaschelli, who is if anybody watches the Food Network, she's one of the Iron Chefs. I used to train her back in the day when long time ago. So she was the inspiration behind Andy being a chef, but her personality is combined with like 2 or 3 other people I know. So they are, yes, they are based on people. And when she says I can't count, a lot of my clients who are here right now, I see Sue and somebody else, they know, they yell at me every single day, like, Lynn, you can't count. You need to have your 8-year-old teach you how to count, because I will say 8 more and then I'll be like 20, 21, 22. So yes, those interactions are based on real interactions with my clients.
It's the best material, right? Yeah. So a question from Susie for both Lynn and Roselle. What's your favorite thing about being an author?
I've been talking so much, so go ahead, Roselle. I'll just drink my champagne.
For me, it's the community, honestly. Like when you find your people, like people that through the writing community, it's very welcoming, and you get to be with a lot of like like-minded people that knows the industry. Like it's just great, like fostering that community. You write together, you share your ups and downs with each other. I mean, Lynn, Berkley's, right?
Yes. Yep. So people ask me all the time, it's like, oh, you must have connections in the writing world. I did not know a single person who wrote. Well, first of all, nobody knew I wrote. So I didn't know a single author. I didn't know a single writer. I didn't have any connections in the publishing world. But over time, and it was through Twitter, like I never understood Twitter. I had a Twitter account, but I never used it because I'm like, why would anybody care if I twit or not? And I used to think they were called twits because it's Twitter. So, and I didn't get it. And then somebody's like, you need to go there and find your people. And so I did. I found my critique partner who was she's in Germany. And we started exchanging work. And then from there, I found the WFWA, which is Women's Fiction Writers Association, and met the president, Christine, who turned out to be my neighbor. She lives 10 minutes from me. And she's actually sitting in my living room right now listening to this. I met her through the internet because it was an international group. And when we found out we lived in the same town, we're like, what? And then from there, you meet all these other critique people. And then once we were with Berkley, the 2021 debuts formed a group called the Berkleys, like athletes, but Berkleys. And it's the 2021-2022 debut group. And we have helped each other so much because so much of publishing is not transparent. Like they don't tell you a lot of stuff. Like it's really kind of up in the air. So we help each other and be like, oh my God, did this happen to you? Did your editor do this? When did you hear about this? And did you like your cover? Did you get choices? So you have somebody to bounce off of, and the entire writing community is so supportive of each other. Mostly, I should say. I know there are people who aren't, but the people who I've met are so supportive. Like the Berkleys, I've not met any of them in person, but when we do, it's going to be like a giant screaming mess. Like people are just going to be like, it's so good to see you. And the other part of being an author is connecting with readers. Like that's why I started writing. I wanted to do for other readers what Leanne Moriarty did for me, like made me feel like there are people out there who are experiencing the same kind of pain, the same kind of trauma that I did, and that it's okay. Like that, you're going to go through bad times. You have your friends. So that's what I wanted to do and I know not everybody's going to love the book. I know there's already been some pretty bad reviews, and yes, I do read reviews, and I know I shouldn't, but I know Rose, Cindy told me that today too.
I will slap your hand off of the keyboard. I told you not to do that.
Cindy said the same thing. And I read and I actually kind of like reading the negative reviews because I like to know what they were turned off about. But anyways, hoping that I connect with people in some way, whether they take something from it that is helpful for them. And so that's the other part of being an author that I love. And be able to do this and connect with people like this.
Yeah. Another question from Sapna. And this would kick for both of you. Would you recommend budding writers go back to school for an MFA or so, or writing class?
Well, for me, it's not required, but if it's something that you're passionate about and something that you can afford to do, go for it. Because I don't have an MFA at all. Lynn, do you?
No, and I used to think they were MBAs, and then I realized I was the wrong subject. But no, I don't have an MBA, MFA, or an NEA. And I agree with Roselle. You do not need one. I don't have one. I never even took a writing course, except for what's necessary in school. If you want to do one, there's nothing wrong with it, because there are people who do get a lot out of the programs. If you can afford it, if you have the time, there's something specific you want to learn, go for it. But I don't, if you want to write and you don't have the resources or, want to do it, you can learn a lot just from critique partners, writing, reading. Like I said, just read as much as you can and just constantly, be in critique groups, have people read it and keep an open mind. Because a lot of people, I'm part of 2 critique groups, and some people get really defensive about their work. And that's not the point. Like the point is because you can say something one way and it's perceived completely different from someone else. And then just knowing like what works for you. So I use my instincts, like, okay, I see where they're going with that, but I don't agree. So I'm not going to take that critique. But that one's like, oh, you know what? That just opened my eyes. I didn't mean to say that. So then I will. So it's really up to you.
And another thing, there are other alternatives to the MFA. There are like workshops, writer workshops you can take. Like there's one that I know, Highlights Foundation. They do like courses that you can take, that you can have a mentor, and then a published writer can look over your pages, give you feedback, and then you can help craft your story or develop your story in over like a few days or a week. I mean, there are alternatives if you want to go that route without having to pay for an MFA or go down like that. I'm just thinking about like costs, what's free, what isn't, and what you're willing to like pay for, like what's better for your budget, etc.
Right. Exactly.
That's great advice. Great advice. And it's never too early or late to start writing, right? When the bug grabs you.
I agree. I actually think that, now I'm in my 40s, that I have more material to write about. I lied. I did try writing when I was in my 20s in college. I said I never wrote a book. I totally lied. I forgot about this book. In my 20s, I decided I'm going to be a writer. And I wrote this book, and it was the most awful thing you have ever read. It was all about college students hooking up. And that was the whole premise of the book. So I put it aside because at that age, I really had nothing to write. I didn't know who I was. I hadn't come into, my Asianness or whatever you call it. So now I think age, like I know a lot of people said it's too late to write. I didn't write my first word until, how old was I? Like 40, 41, something like that. So it's never too late.
Okay, we have time for a few more questions if anyone would like to type something in. I know there have been many wonderful comments in the chat. If anyone has a question before we conclude the program for tonight. Okay, here's a question. This is from Sayuma Maya. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Did anything about writing this book surprise you?
A lot surprised me. I mean, the fact that I even wrote a book surprised me. It's changed so much from the first version of the book. Like I used to make Lexa used to be half, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to turn that light on. Lexa used to be half Japanese and half white. I did not, then, like I said, I did not embrace my Taiwanese. I felt like I needed to change her identity. And a lot of Asian writers I know are writing from a white perspective or like a different perspective, not their own. And I actually mentored someone recently who is, I think she's Asian, but she didn't write from her perspective. She wrote from a different perspective. And it's like, almost we feel like we can't write from that perspective, like that we have to conform to change. So that really surprised, like, then I sat down, I was like, why am I writing from, and somebody asked me, like, why are you writing from a half Japanese perspective? Are you Japanese? Did you live there? I'm like, no. And I was like, why am I doing that? So that really surprised me. I was like, I should write what I know. So that changed, and I decided to own up to my Taiwanese. And so that was a big surprise. And then like the whole Tiger Mom thing came as a big surprise. Like she did not originally, I didn't set out to write about a Tiger Mom. And it's not about her story. It's not about the Tiger Mom story. Like a lot of people think it's her story based on the title, but it's not. But I didn't set out to make her the focus. But then as I was writing, I realized that she was the antagonist. And so I completely 180'd and did that change. So there was a lot that changed over the course of writing that was not originally there. So that's what makes writing interesting. Like you never know. It's like, yeah.
Anisha has a question. How do you balance motherhood and writing? Has motherhood changed your writing in any way?
Okay, so my 8-year-old was homeschooled by me last year, and he, after 2 months, told me that he retired from mommy school because he hated it so much. So not balancing very well like that. I was literally, because my husband is a FDNY fireman. So during the pandemic, he was always at the firehouse and slept there. So it was just the two of us stuck together 24/7. And I could not write because he just would need attention. I tried to put him in front of the TV to write because that was the only time he would leave me alone if I let him watch TV. but he loved the British shows at the time, like Peppa Pig, Thomas the Engine, Paddington. And my kawaii book, my kawaii character started speaking with a British accent. And they'd be like, "You're so cheeky, mummy, and that's brilliant." And I was like, okay, I can't do this. So when my husband came out, I would hide in my car and try to write some words in the car. I would go down, we live on a lake. I would go down to the lake and say, "This is girls only." And I would take our girl dogs and go down there and write. It's really hard. It's very hard to write, be a mom and do this at the same time. So this is why I don't write every day. I only write when I have a chunk of time away from him where he's not asking for my attention. So whether it's like my mom takes him or, my husband's home and I'll go somewhere, except during the pandemic. But it's very hard to balance, but I do it because, and I carve out time to do it. And like I said, like when we were in Kauai, I would just take the computer with me during happy hour. So we're having dinner together, but I'm writing. Mm-hmm. So, you have to, you just do what works. And that's why I always have my computer with me, because I never know when inspirations will strike. And like, I would be waiting for him for a swimming lesson and writing in my car, like waiting for him. So, yeah.
Strike while the iron's hot, I guess. So a comment and a question. Lynn, you have a beautiful blog post about Adele's songs' effect on your son. Do you plan to incorporate the power of music in your future books? Great question.
That blog post is because when we first adopted him, he cried like he was inconsolable. And the only song that would calm him down was Adele's Hello, but only if I sang along. And I am not a singer. My sister says my voice sounds like nails on a chalkboard, like screeching, like that's how bad it is. Oh, no. I know. I think my sister's here too, and she will tell you that she fully stands behind her thing. My mom spent lots of money on singing lessons and they did not work. So I had to screech out Adele's, and if you know the song, it gets really high, and I had to sing it like 30 times at a time before he would quiet down. So in the second book, Red Thread of Fate, it is based on his adoption journey. It's not about him, but it's based on that journey that we took. And the power of music is, I used that song, Adele's Hello, in there, and how it was the only song that quieted the little boy. And yeah, because he loves Adele. Like he knew Adele from the beginning. He kissed Adele's face. If he ever met Adele, he'd probably do what I do if I met Leanne Moriarty. So we would both just go so, yeah.
And then Susie has a question, and not so much about your books or your novel, but which of your Instagram videos was the most fun to record?
So the reason I started making Instagram videos was because my marketing person, Jean, who she's brilliant. She's like, "Oh, we have a great idea. You're always teaching," because I was teaching virtually on Instagram Live. She's like, "You're always teaching on Instagram. Let's do a series of videos." And she had like 11 videos that she wanted to make with a script. And I realized as I'm recording these things, I cannot talk on camera when I'm being recorded for a video. So I kept flubbing the thing. I forgot my name. I forgot the name of the book. I was just like I was like talking to myself. I was like, wait, what am I talking about? And I made them into blooper reels just as a joke. And they kind of took off and everybody thought they were hilarious. And I started making these videos of my bloopers and realized that I have this knack for making reels. So, and now the reel videos have come out and they're so boring compared to the bloopers that I made that I'm like, I don't think anybody wants to see this and hear about, what I'm talking about. So that, if you go to my Instagram reel, I came up with some pretty, and my son has now gotten involved in it. He wants to be in it and promote. So he's, there's my favorite one is he's reading my book, but he's going down the slide, he's on the swing, he's driving his toy car, promoting my book. So yeah, they're just, I was doing them before the launch because I had a lot of pre-launch anxiety, dreams were like the book bombed and Berkley is like, we're not publishing your second book and you're done. So I was just making the videos to take my mind off of that.
Good marketing now.
Yeah. But now it turned into, people said you look, it's funny, you're making fun of yourself. So I was like, all right.
It's good to have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
So I don't see any other questions in the chat. If anyone has a question, now's your chance to type it in. And if not, that's fine. I'll ask a last question. Your book cover, which is very striking, did you have a say in the final design?
Yeah, they were very good about it. They asked me to send them samples of what I like, and everything I sent had real people in it, either with their back turned or, you know, something like that. And then they came up with this, but it was pink. It was pink, and then they gave me 3 other options, and they were all very like different from what I expected. And my first reaction was I freaked out. I said, "Oh my God, what is that?" Because I was expecting something totally different. And my agent, you know, was like, "Lyn, these are beautiful. They're like different. They're, you know, they're trying to go for that up market. It's very striking." And my friend Allison, who is here also, she had to call me because I was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do? This is not what I was expecting." And then she was like, "They're beautiful. You don't know, you know, like they really, really are." And so I slept on it. I woke up the next morning with a clear head and like an open mind because I was not thinking of real people. And I realized it was absolutely amazing, like the eyes. And so I picked this one. There were other ones that I just asked, like, could you, instead of making it pink, because I felt the pink was a little too whatever. And originally the Empire State Building was coming out of her eyebrow or something like that. And it looks kind of weird that her, you know, the Empire, so they moved it down. And they did, you know, just minor tweaks. And I wanted the sesame seeds in there for the sesame ball.
Yeah.
And they came up with this thing, and it's like a work of art. So they did an amazing job. Vicky Chu is the illustrator, and she's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I agree that the red.
Yeah, she did my covers as well.
Right?
Yeah.
Because Roselle's in the back. She did Roselle's too. So she's amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the last question or statement, I should say, you know, if you want, what do you want us to know about your upcoming projects? What's next that you'd like to tell us about before we close for the night?
Well, they're all about Asian Americans, or specifically Taiwanese Americans in some way. And somebody always dies. And I'm just going to warn you that because it just happens that way. And they're all, I mean, their central theme is, a lot of it is just family secrets, family drama, things that people, because I don't know if you know this, but in a lot of Asian families, they keep a lot of things secret. Like they don't, you know, like it's like taboo subjects, like you can't talk about it. And then you find out in your, when you're adult, like, oh my God, that happened. So it's just about a lot of that stuff that happens that nobody knows how it shapes people. But there's a lot of family drama and stuff like that. So, and I also wrote a thriller. So that's more like a suspense thriller. That this is why my agent says I'm doing too much. Like, but yeah, so YA, whatever.
Okay.
Kind of branching out here.
So we'll keep our eyes open for that.
Yes.
And Roselle, did you want to say anything?
My next book is coming out next August 2022. It's called Sophie Goes Lonely Hearts Club, and it's about a magical matchmaker who comes home after attending matchmaking school in Shanghai. And she has to match 7 old grumpy Chinese bachelors to save her reputation.
I can't wait for this book. I'm like, I want it now.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And lots of nice comments in the chat. Thank you so much for today's chat. It's very insightful. Compliments to the book cover. It's gorgeous. So if you have a chance to look through before we close out, but I do want to thank both of you for joining us, for providing this program with the Harrison Public Library. Want to remind everyone that copies of the book, signed copies, mind you, signed, that's special, are available at the Village Bookstore, which is our local bookstore in Pleasantville in New York, and they ship in the US. But if you know someone who wants the book outside of the US, buy it for them at the Village Bookstore, and then you could ship it to them wherever they may be. So I just wanted to mention that in case anyone would like to get a signed copy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. Thank you, Galina.
Thank you. It was an incredible event. We're so proud of both of you.